Introduction by Kamala Das. It's one of the important poems that we will come across here, and we will discuss about it. It is for most of the universities teach this poem. So an introduction is perhaps the most famous of the poems written by Kamala Das in a self-reflective and confessional tone. From her maiden publication, Summer in Calcutta, 1965. Summer in Calcutta, 1965. From that publication, it has been taken. Now, what will we do with this poem? We will discuss it in details. What she wants to say. It is a self-reflective and confessional tone. The poem is a strong remark on patriarchal society prevalent today and brings to light the miseries, bondage, pain suffered by the fairer sex in such times. The poet says that she is not interested in politics, but claims that she can name all the people who have been in power right from the time of Nehru by saying that she can repeat them as fluently as days of week or names of month. She indirectly states the fact that politics in the country is a game of a few chosen elite who ironically rule a democracy. The fact that she remembers them so well depicts that these people have been in power for repetitive cycles. Next, she describes herself saying that she is an Indian born in the Malabar and very brown in color. She speaks in three languages, writes in two, and dreams in one, articulating the thought that dreams have their own universal language. Kamala Das echoes that the comfort level that one requires. People asked her not to write in English since her mother tongue, since isn't her mother tongue, isn't. Moreover, the fact that English was a colonial language prevalent as medium of communication during British times, to even more criticism every time she had an encounter with a critic friend or visiting cousins. She emphasizes that the language she speaks becomes her own. It is half English, half Hindi. It seems rather amusing, but the point is that it is honest. Its imperfection only make it more human, rendering it close to what we call naturality. So it is the language of expression and emotion, as it voices her joys, sorrows, and hopes. It is an integral to her as cawing is to the crows, and roaring to the lions. Though imperfect, it is not a deaf, blind speech like that of trees in storm of the clouds of rain. Neither does it echo the incoherent mutterings of the funeral pyre. It possesses a coherence of the soul, an emotional coherence. She moves on telling her own story. She was a child, and later people told her that she had grown up for a body and had started showing signs of poverty. But she didn't seem to understand this interpretation because at the heart she was still but a child. When she asked for love from a soulmate, not knowing what else to ask, he took the 16-year-old to his bedroom. The expression, the strong expression, a criticism of child marriage, which pushes children into such a predicament while they are still very childish at heart. Though he didn't beat her, she felt beaten and her body seemed crushed under her own weight. This is a very emphatic expression of how unprepared the body of a 16-year-old is for the assault it gets subjected to. Of sexuality, it hints at the first sexual encounter of a lady with a man. She shrank pitifully, ashamed of her femininity. She tries to overcome such humiliation by being tomboyish, dressing up like a boy. And thereafter, when she opts for male clothing to hide her femininity, the guardians impose typical female attire with warnings to fit into the socially determined attributes of a woman, to become a wife and a mother and get confined to the domestic routine. She is threatened to remain within the four walls of a female space, lest she should make herself a psychic or maniac. They even ask her to hold her tears when rejected in love. She calls them categorizers, since they tend to categorize every person on the basis of points that are purely whimsical. She explains the encounter with a man. She attributes him with not a proper noun, but a common noun. Every man, she says, to reflect his universality. The fact that in such a patriarchal society, this is a nature inherent to every male, but the sheer fact that he belongs to the stronger sex. He defined himself by the I, the supreme male ego. He is tightly compartmentalized as a sovereign sheet. It portrays the power politics of the patriarchal society that is thriving. That is all about. So Kamala Dash is very critical about this position that she faces. She explains this encounter. It portrays the power politics of the patriarchal society that is thriving. It is this eye that stays long away without any restriction. It's free to laugh at his own will. Succumbs to a woman only out of lust and later feels ashamed of his own weakness that lets himself loose to a woman. Towards the end of the poem, a role reversal occurs. As this I gradually transitions to the poetess herself. She pronounces how this I is also sinner and saint, beloved and betrayed. As the role reversal occurs, the woman too becomes the I reaching the pinnacle of self assertion. So, if we go by the title, the dictionary meaning of the word introduction is introducing, formal presentation of a person, a matter, study material, or the like. It is thus a preliminary statement concerning such a person, matter, material, or anything else. Kamala Dash is found to have used the term introduction as the title of the poem. An introduction in this specific sense. In fact, the poem is introducing the poetess herself. So, an introduction is a poem which provides a focus for an exercise in autobiography. So, this poem is often termed autobiographical. Kamala Dash's own story. Kamala Dash impresses by being very much herself in this poem, and the tone is distinctively feminine. Critical response to Dash's poetry has been intimately connected to critical perception of her personality and politics. Her provocative poetry has seldom produced lukewarm reactions. Kamala Dash's poetry has been praised for the originality, bold images, exploration of female sexuality, and intensely personal voice. However, there's a lack of structure and craftsmanship in her verse. We, the readers, often find powerful feminist images in Dashi's poetry, focusing on critics of marriage, motherhood, women's relationship to their bodies, and power over their sexuality, and the roles women are offered in traditional society, Indian society at least. Many critics have analyzed Dash as a confessional poet writing in the tradition of Sylvia Plath, Annie Sexton, and Dennis Levertov. Though Das does not adapt to the poetry writing in the traditional aesthetic form, she has created a new language for expression. And many scholars agree that Das is an important figure whose bold and honest voice has re energized Indian writings in English. Dashi's An Introduction is a poem which experiences a few ships in the moon. What starts as a sarcastic comment on politics and on the level of Indo-Anglian later shift to the personal and biological aspects of the narrator, which according to Dash is the story of every woman. So by then the poet calls herself a human who is very much sensitive to everything just as how a man is. So the poem begins with a note on history and how memory plays its role in storing the past. The poet says that she knows all the names of those who are and are in power and can decide at any time, but one thing she doesn't know is the role of politics. By saying so, Dash mocks at the political embodiment in the society. And by whom is this political organization run by? Kamala Das touches upon the issue of language as well. She detests all the categorizers and who tell her to write in a regional language instead of writing in English. And the reply, as she quote, is what does it say? I speak three languages, write in two, dream in one. Though Kamala Das prefers writing in English, she claims that it is original and still Indian, and the distortion and queerness present in her writings is her own. She uses simple animal and natural imagery to substantiate that she can best express herself in English than in any other language. Also, this particular issue is seen in yet another poem, which can serve as a good reference here. Don't Call Me Anglo-Indian was a famous poet, Syed Amaruddin, deals with almost the same issues. The poet is categorized under the title Indo-Anglian, meaning an Indian writings in English language. And he too abhors or hates the label makers, justifying his say by giving various nostalgic moments from his life and stay in India. So an introduction can shift to different mode, where the poet talks about her early youth and how she asked for love but was deceived. For he drew a youth of 16 into the bedroom and closed the door. He did not beat me, but my sad woman body felt so beaten. So these lines show how Kamala Das, as an autobiographical character in the poem, felt insulted not because she was a victim of abuse physically, but her character and the womanliness was misused and abused. After having said the bitter instances of her past, Das now turns to raise a voice of protest, where she ignores her womanliness by wearing a shirt and a brother's trousers and cutting her hair short. She steps out of the so-called domestic arena, home, and begins to add weight to her saying the word. So the poem rests on a very impacting message to those women who need immense support in voicing out their opinion. A reference can be made to a poem, Trouser Enthusiast by Paula Glynn, Paula Glynn, where she too begins the poem by saying that she is a feminist and that she has two equal rights to see, learn, and enjoy what the world offers in great depths. I have no joys that are not yours. No eggs which are not yours. I too call myself I. So these lines depict the very emotions of a human being, meaning the poet wants to be treated equal and that she is no less than a man. In holding responsibilities, also, we the readers get to know the sense of identity crisis being portrayed. The very word I, which is referred to someone who can take a firm stand on the society and someone who can make decisions and enjoy freedom. And I, in inverted comma, in this context, is referred to a man. But Dash contradicts this and substantiates by calling herself as I, as someone who should be respected. The self should be respected. In a way, Kamala Dash's work, to an extent, is connected to larger historical and cultural contexts and complicated shifting post-colonial identities. Though many scholars do not approve of Kamala Dash as an aesthetic poet, they still find her as a prominent figure for the explicitness, honest and bold expressions in her writings. The poem and introduction is really an account by the poetess of her own self. The title and introduction seems quite appropriate and relevant to the theme, although the introduction is the poetess herself. That is the most important point. Understanding the poem from the perspective of the self. So here we see Kamala Dash, who confesses identity more than anything else. She impresses on the fact that she has an identity, that she is a woman, and she wants to make us feel that she maintains identity. She doesn't want to change her language of expression, nor does she think that she needs to specify herself what she wants. It is very clear, her saying is very clear, that she is she and that she must be respected. Also as a self, a man would call himself I. She wants herself to call as I. She wants to disclose the fact that she has an identity of herself, even though she's a woman. And her very expression, her thought, may not match with the society at large, yet it is a thought that is true to herself, own self. She is true that she is her own self and that she'd like to maintain it. Come whatever may, she does not bother even if anyone criticizes her. Her identity is her own. Her identity is with any other man, and therefore she is I. So, she wants to connect herself to a larger historical and cultural context, a very much complicated identification in a society, a patriarchal society like ours. Our society will not accept her way of expression, that's true. But whatever way she does it, she doesn't do anything wrong. In her own self, in her own way, in her own manner, her expression is typically as she is. She cannot cast away her expression I. A man would call himself I, and so she would call herself I. She wants that she should be respected as I, as a woman, and shouldn't be taken as something else. She is not someone else, she is her own self. The society may not admit it, but It is she who is saying. A woman who is protesting the identity of herself, which is denied by the patriarchal society. It is not that she criticizes the society, but the way society looks at femininity, she would like to impress on the fact that femininity is not different. It is a gender quality. It is a gender way of expression. She would like to impress herself as the one who respects the gender literature. And through literature, she would like to voice a protest the way the people look at her. She thinks she is not different from others. She has a desire, she has a likeness, she has a love aspect, she has a sexual identity which is common to all eyes, and so she is I. So, introduction is introducing the self, the identity of self. She wants to introduce herself as an identity, a wholesome identity, not a woman alone. Yes, she is a woman, but she has her own individuality, that is I. That I is very impressive. She wants to impress on the fact that she cannot deny that I, because that I is she herself. So it may be that she may be protesting, and she is doing so because she thinks that it is in this way that she can bring her identity to the surface, the identity of all women to the surface. So, in that respect, she is not wrong in expression. She is right, and she thinks that whatever the society may be thinking about her, but her own self she would like to protect, irrespective of the fact that she's a woman, but there shouldn't be any discrimination in the name of gender. Gender is an identification of male and female, but the individuality in both are the same I. She hints at that in her poem. So we appreciate her endeavor to make herself felt in this patriarchal world that would always deny woman from this identity. She is not different from others. She is as she is. But she's a woman that who should be respected with all the feelings, all desires, all the passions that is also in a man. But she shouldn't be denied that wholesomeness of her own self, that she is a woman and she needs to be different. No, nothing like that. She would like to remain as she is. Not to say that no, I'm a woman and I should behave like a woman as others want me to behave. I'm a woman, sure. Truly, my womanliness should not be tarnished. At the same time, others should also try to understand that my womanliness has an identity of its own. Manliness also has an identity of his own. So a woman has an identity of her own. Let the identity prevail. Shouldn't be encroached upon by the gender politics of the society. Her confession is a feeling that every man and every woman would feel for himself, herself and himself in his or her way, and that shouldn't be denied. She means that. That is the expression in the poem of the title, Introduction. And so we find that the title is relevant. There is nothing wrong in the title. It is relevant because it shows the identity crisis in a woman in this patriarchal society, but she would like to demolish that crisis and make herself feel that she is I, a woman in her own self, cannot be criticized at any cost, whatever she does, as usually it happens with women. Whatever they do, the patriarchal society would say, don't do it. You are after all a woman. Nothing like that. As a man would do so, she would. As a man would feel, she would. As a man has a passion, she has. As a man has a need, sexual need that he wants to fulfill, she also has it. But she doesn't want to be pained by that need. No amount of pain would she tolerate anymore. It is enough for the society, the patriarchal society, to think of her that she's a woman and she should behave like a woman. Nothing like that. She says that yes, she's a woman, but that doesn't mean that she is totally different from man. All feelings, all desires, all passion, everything is associated in it, and nobody can deny that fact. So, taking all the considerations of the gender and the femininity in the gender, gender is a larger sphere within which is femininity. But femininity should not be treated different. It is one and one with every individual, man or woman. That she impresses upon us. And that is why she is different from other ladies. So she would like to call herself I. More clearly. So that is what is explained in the poem. In the title itself, it becomes prominent, distinctive, identifiably distinctive. It is nothing like a specialty that she should be thought of. That I is a concept that is present in both man and woman. That should be understood. So she introduces herself as a woman with all the passions, desires, feelings, sexual desires, all of the desires associated with it, with which man grows, so does a woman. And she's grown with all the feelings of that self identity I. So you can very well understand what is the context of the poem. And the context is very individualistic, identical, gender wise, is also important. The gender theory is prominent. The patriarchal society should not take it to be different. In case of a woman would enjoy the same feeling, the same desires as a man. So her eye is not different from that of the eye of man. I, capital I mean to say, is not different from that of a man. So I hope you have understood the poem. I've explained it from the point of view of her own thought and own thinking. Clear? Now you see, here we end the lecture on the poem itself.